Where might you find the home of most of the submarines that stand ready to deliver a nuclear attack should the President ever order one? Right here at Naval Base Kitsap, Bangor. The Boomers, as they are known, are the biggest subs the country has ever built. We'll explore how they got here and how they've changed the face of Kitsap County, as well as the dynamic of warfare on this third episode of Tales of the Sound. Next. The atomic bombs dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War II killed more than 200,000 people, with thousands more badly injured and burned. It was the first and only time a country has used an atomic weapon in combat. Today, 9 countries possess the power to deliver a devastating nuclear strike. 8 of the submarines capable of that power call Western Washington home, piloting through the Hood Canal Bridge each time the crews make the 2 months or so long deployments to and from the Pacific Ocean. The subs hold within them a power far more potent than the weapons made during World War II. Each sub today has a payload of 20 missiles containing multiple warheads, each with the explosive energy of up to 475 kilotons. The bomb dropped on Hiroshima, Japan, by contrast, had the explosive energy of 15 kilotons. We got here by way of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. The conflict would come to define a generation accustomed to the brink of nuclear war through events like the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Christine Nordleaf of Manette remembers as a schoolgirl how often she was trained to hide and even evacuate in the event of a nuclear attack.
All of the students in my class and whoever else was in grade school, that would have been, I think, 1957, were issued these stainless steel ID bracelets. And on it, it had our name and address and phone number, and it had the location of where we would be relocated to with our family. Our fathers would leave work, whether it was the Navy Yard or wherever, get to our homes. We would then run home, meet them, get in the car, and in our case, we would be driven to Long Branch to our grandparents' farm, and that's where we would all connect. The air raid siren would go off in the Great Northwest Building, and it would do, I think, 1 or 2 turns and then shut off. And this went on for years.
That's why these children are practicing to duck and cover, just as you do in your school.
So when you're growing up in a military town where our primary income is from the military, you were constantly reminded, not to mention we watched news with our parents when the news would come on.
3, 2, 1, 0. These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other, or we must die.
The United States and the Soviet Union came to possess 3 different kinds of nukes. Bombs that were dropped from planes, missiles fired from the land, and last but not least, missiles launched from submarines. Proponents say the so-called strategic deterrent nuclear triad has kept enemies from attacking the United States with such weaponry, knowing full well America would return a most devastating fire. But the military views the submarines as the most survivable leg of the nuclear triad. That's because submarines ride underneath the waves, where they can be hidden from all to see. The first ballistic missile submarine, the USS George Washington, test-fired 2 missiles in July of 1960. It was a game changer. Suddenly, submarines that were nuclear-powered could stay under the waves indefinitely. Ultimately, using a missile called the Polaris, the Navy produced what is known as the 41 for Freedom. that many submarines, including the USS Woodrow Wilson, which is immortalized behind me at Naval Base Kitsap Bangor. It was at Bangor where the Navy developed a home for a more modern nuclear weapon for its submarines, the Trident. In 1982, the USS Ohio arrived at Bangor, the first of those subs of the namesake Ohio class. Today, 14 of the subs, 8 of which reside at Bangor, continue to carry out the near constant deployments to keep those Trident missiles ready and hidden at sea.
The development of the SSBN was groundbreaking in the nuclear deterrence mission. What weapon system has survived 60 years, relatively conducting things very much the same? You send an SSBN to sea, no one knows where it is for a long period of time, and it deters the United States enemies from attacking the United States because they understand that there's mutually assured destruction.
The arrival of Trident changed Kitsap County forever. Silverdale, formerly a small farming town with one stoplight, grew to encompass lots of cul-de-sacs and shopping malls. But not everyone was thrilled to become what is now the nation's largest deployed stockpile of nuclear weapons aboard Strategic Weapons Facility Pacific and its submarines. A group called the Ground Zero Center for Nonviolent Action bought property right adjacent to Naval Base Kitsap Bangor, where they continue to protest nuclear weapons to this day. One member of Ground Zero with a unique perspective is Tom Rogers, a retired Navy captain. Rogers served aboard submarines before joining the organization once he returned to civilian life.
I was chief engineer on an attack submarine home-ported in San Diego, and Ohio had finished her trials and was changing home port to Bangor and came through the Panama Canal. Our job was to pick up Ohio and then shadow her and do exercises with her all the way up the coast to the Strait of Juan de Fuca. I had no idea at that time what was going on ashore with the thousands of Ground Zero protesters that had come out to greet the Ohio. I finished my command in 1991, and that was the year that the Cold War ended. And for the next 7 years, I didn't have this sudden epiphany. I just saw that national security policy that depended on nuclear weapons was not going away. In fact, it was being accentuated even though the Soviet Union no longer existed. The sailors, the officers on the submarines worked their butts off. They are the smartest young people. I have every respect for them. I wish they could be doing other work. And I did the same work. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing the work. The fault is with our political leaders and our national security policy. If we didn't need nuclear weapons, those people would be doing much more productive stuff than they're doing right now. What I want to see happen is for us to elect leaders and other folks to elect leaders that have the leadership and the morality to negotiate an end of nuclear weapons.
The United Nations Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons was ratified by more than 50 countries and took effect in January 2021. While it's unlikely to have any immediate impact on states with such weaponry, nuclear weapons are now illegal in the eyes of the UN. The Ohio class of submarines that carries those nukes is aging, and the Defense Department's top priority is replacing them with a new fleet of 12. The first of those submarines is anticipated to cost more than $14.4 billion. But it is a high priority of the United States military to ensure that no matter how long it takes the Columbia class to come into service, America will remain nuclear armed under the waves. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Tales of the Sound. If you have any feedback, send it to me at josh.farley@kitsapsun.com. Thanks, and see you next time.